Welcome to the Real Life Artist Podcast. This is the show where we discuss the challenges that come with being an artist, as well as ways you can overcome those challenges through practical applications, shared experiences, and general discussions. My name's Luke. I'm your host. Thank you for joining in today. Before we begin, get your favorite snack or beverage. I got my beverage, Waterloo. And let me crack that open. Refreshing lemon lime. If you are in your car, just sit back, relax, and enjoy. If you're on your way to work or something, glad you're here, glad you tuned in. Today's topic is why and how we should become clear on our goals. This episode is titled Define and Align Your Goals. You know, one thing I've noticed is that a big issue for artists is that we have issues defining goals clearly. We waver one way to the other often, and this may change on a monthly basis or a weekly basis, depending on where we're at with things. And if I were to ask you, what are your goals for the next 6 months? Do you have an answer that you can stay with and commit to that long? Regardless, I want to first start by saying you don't have to do music full-time, right? There's nothing wrong with being part-time or just a hobbyist, etc. Nothing at all. But on this topic and this episode specifically, and really this show by large, I'm speaking to artists who want to do this full-time or are doing it full-time. And on that note, I find it very interesting that the question that artists seem to struggle with the most is this simple question. Do you want to do music full-time or not? And I'm going to ask you now, do you want to do music full-time or not? It's a serious question. Think about it. Do you? You're listening to this show. Is this a full-time thing? Is it a hobby thing? And if you can't give a solid answer, hopefully you'll have the clarity by the end of this episode to do so. So let's jump right into the core content of this episode. The three main things we're going to be talking about. So the three things as an outline are this: the problem with not defining your goals, being watchful of your metrics of success, and how to become clear on your goals. So pretty dense stuff. Let's get right into it. So number one, the problem with not defining clear goals as artists. So The first point for this is that you can't focus your energy in one direction if you don't have clear goals. And this is going to slow you down, prevent you from reaching your goals. You're going to burn out very quickly because you're pulled every which way. And as an example, you're unlikely to see success if you're working on 50 things at once. If you were to put those 50 things just into one, now you're laser focused. So the problem with not defining your goals, number one, you can't focus your energy in one direction. Two, you're much less likely to make returns on your investment. So think about it. Music is an investment with time, energy, effort, all three. And if you've got no direction to go, you're not going to have anything concrete to monetize. So the problem with not defining clear goals, two, you're much less likely to make returns on your investment. And three, you will be frustrated and you might be tempted to give up. By not defining clear goals, it's discouraging and it's frustrating. I get it, 100%. I've been there. It's going to wear down your mental state, and you're going to feel like no one understands you, or you don't even understand yourself. So we're going to discuss the ways now to become clear on your goals. In that first step, I should say, even before we talk about the how, it's really, I'm going to say, a warning to what we define as success. So number one, the problem with defining your goals is you're not going to have all your focus in one direction. You're much less likely to make returns on your investment, and you're going to be frustrated and discouraged, which may lead you to giving up. So that's the problem with not defining our goals. Now, let's move on to point two, the main part of this content for this episode. Point two, be watchful of your metric of success. Well, what is a metric of success? Well, it's a tangible unit that defines how successful you are in a venture or goal. For example, if money's your metric of success, then when you earn lots of money, you are successful. Or at least that's the idea, right? So why do we have to be watchful of this metric of success? Well, here's the thing. We're humans, and by nature we're competitive, and we work to optimize our habits, systems, and efforts to get what we want. So sometimes we will unreasonably or unfairly use means to attain our metrics. We naturally overcorrect to the point that it can be harmful to ourselves and others. Going back to the money example, if you owned a restaurant and your only metric of success was money or revenue, then you likely don't care about customer satisfaction and the quality of service. Because even if the customer doesn't like the food, they're still likely to pay, right? Because of laws and such. Even if they don't like the service, they're still likely to pay. And also, if your only metric of success is revenue, then you probably won't care about the employee workplace happiness or morale. So you see where this is going. We're going to be unbalanced if we shift our scales to only attaining one thing at the expense of everything else. So this all seems like a lot. How can we get clear on our goals with these two things in mind? That there's problems with not defining our goals, and that we also need to be watchful of what we define as a metric of success. Well, here's how we're going to become clear on our goals. Number one, I've got a question for you. And this is a question that I struggled with. It was difficult. I fought with this question, so I'm going to pose it to you. What is that one thing that makes you sick to your stomach and that you feel in your gut? And you almost feel guilty if you're not doing it. So that's the question. Totally serious. What's that one thing that makes you sick to your stomach and you feel it in your gut and you feel like you're guilty if you're not doing it? So, in other words, what's your gut trying to tell you to do, but you keep silencing it because you tell yourself you don't know how to do it? You say, well, I want to make music, but I have no clue how to make a living doing it. Or I don't even know how to make music and it's too late to start, so I'm just going to ignore this inner calling, this inner feeling. What is your gut telling you to do, but you keep trying to silence it because you tell yourself you don't know how to do it? As I said before, this is a question that I struggled for a very long time, and it got to the point where I had to make a decision. Either I give up pursuing a music career forever because, pushing it away just made me feel physically sick, mentally exhausted, or listen to what my gut is saying and pursue music full time. I decided to pursue music. But this is such a hard choice, and I understand if you're having a hard time with it. But ask yourself those questions, and we're going to repeat those again by the end of the show, so you can really ponder them. But As a side note, really, I want to mention the only time that we're actually defeated is if we're truly defeated in our mind. If you're telling yourself, man, this is never going to work, then it's not going to. If you don't want to play an instrument because, you think you think you're going to fail and I'm just not going to try, then you're just not going to be able to be a musician, plain and simple. So let's work on mindset and get clear on our goals. So we talked about, what's that one thing that you sort of feel sick and almost guilty or your gut's telling you to do. The second question is, what is your reason to pursue music full time? And actually write this down. I'm going to reiterate that, but actually write this down. What are your reasons? So here are some thinking points on this. Do you want to be your own boss or your own business owner? Well, that's great. All power to you. Do you want to provide a good living and, your current job situation or circumstances are not allowing? That's also great. Do you love and enjoy the process and results of creating music? That's awesome. These are all super valid reasons. The reasons I personally decided to pursue music full-time breaks down into this. 1, 25%, because I want to prove wrong those who doubt me. And I think as artists, we can all relate to this. I've had a lot of people who doubt me and don't think I can do it, didn't think I could do it, etc. Another 25%, because I love making music and it's, the art form, and I want to share my story. I want to get my message out. And 3, and this is actually the bigger chunk, the 50%. I want to provide a good life for my wife and future family. Your reasons may be different, and that is totally fine. No worries whatsoever. I expect them to be different. But actually write them down. Yes, use a pen and paper and think about them. Challenge them. Let me give you an example of that. I told a friend of mine, we were having a conversation about this. I was trying to sort of get aligned on my goals. And a friend of mine asked me why I want to do music. And I told him the one point about proving people wrong. And he asked me a very interesting and thought-provoking question that I'm going to pose to you. He said, okay, let's hypothetically assume everybody you were trying to prove wrong died. They're gone, clear from the earth. It's a hypothetical, right? Does your reason still stand? Does it still make sense to prove people wrong? In other words, does that still make sense? And I told him, well, I see where you're going with this, but, my very Eminem-like answer would be, see, that's what happens to haters. It puts you 6 feet down, you carry that to your grave. And of course, just being silly. But then, I told him, hey, I get what you're trying to say. Proving everyone wrong isn't a bad reason necessarily, but it maybe shouldn't be the only reason you pursue something. So, it can be a part of it, but maybe shouldn't be the only reason. Lastly, on becoming clear on goals, there's this other section. So it's, so far, what's that gut feeling you've got? What's the reason you want to do this full time, if you do? And then thirdly, let's consider financials, right? It's the big elephant in the room, and impact. Financials and impact. So during that conversation with my friend, I explained to him that, I'm making money from composing music for commercials and producing for artists, but I really want to be an artist myself. Like sing and rap and stuff on tracks. And it bothered me that I couldn't make money or a living doing that. And so we sort of talked about this sort of solution where to make music a full-time living, I could compose for films, commercials, artists, and that would be like how I make a living. That's the money part of this music career. The impact part is to make my own personal project, my artist music that I would share with the world. And suddenly for me, everything became clear. I could do music, have the services I offer to make a living, and then I have a platform to get my message across. So a win-win. And I want to highlight that this might be an option for you as well. If you're kind of like, well, I really like it for the passion, but I need to make a living. Consider the fact that you can have like fun projects, personal projects, and then you can have the business side. Or in some cases, consider the fact that your personal stuff might also be your breadwinner. So, and that's fine too, if that's the way you want to do it. No worries at all. But as an example, if you did want to sort of split things up, maybe you can mix and master music as a service, and that's kind of your business side. Build up a portfolio, and then you have the artist stuff. I suggest you have, a financial stability focus and an impact focus for your music career. I think it's going to work very well. If both happen to be the same thing, that's great, that's fine too, but consider the fact that you can have the two things. Be a business by day and then an artist by night. So, thank you for sticking around. Those are the main topics, the bulk of what we are covering. I hope that was useful. To summarize, let's go through the summary of the 3 main points. So number 1, not defining your goals is a problem. It's going to lead to frustration, loss of focus and attention, and no return on your investment. We need to be careful also when we're measuring our metrics of success, because again, we don't want to become unbalanced and focus on one aspect and not others. And then how do we become clear on our goals? These 3 main points or questions. Question 1, what's the one thing that makes you sick to your stomach and that you feel in your gut? Almost as if you're guilty when you're not doing it. That's question 1. Really think about that. What's your gut really telling you and you keep pushing it away? 2, discover your reason for pursuing music full time. So this will usually be a mix of things, which might include financial stability, impact, family, etc., more. And thirdly, and final point, consider how you're going to make a living doing music, and also consider how you will make an impact if that is part of your goals. These 2 things can be the same or separate, but it's mindful that maybe you have to do both. And that's okay as long as they're both what we're wanting to do. So, thank you for listening. I hope you got a lot out of this episode. Please consider leaving a review if you enjoyed today's episode. Check the show notes for ways you can reach me. Please share your stories, experiences, questions, comments, concerns, and more. Would love to hear from you. Thank you for listening and have a good one.